Welcome back to Liberty Bytes on the Think Liberty Network. I'm your host, William Gadsden. You can follow me personally on Twitter at William_Gadsden, or check out my Facebook page at William Gadsden Political Commentator, which is finally back in operation now. Check out Think Liberty on Facebook, Twitter, or whatever your favorite social media outlet is. Give us a follow and a like for updates on new episodes, and more. Now, I know I promised to have a video up for this one, but we ran into some technical difficulties, and we're making some changes to the studio as well, so I do apologize. But this is some important stuff, so let the sweet sound of my voice serenade you with the latest forms of Democratic BS. So, the Democrats and their huge stable of candidates are already pushing hard for 2020. But because there are just so dang many of them, they are looking for new and inventive ways to set themselves apart from their rivals for the Democratic nomination. After all, things like universal health care are just so 2016. So what's the new fix? Spoiler alert, it still includes your money. So let's talk about two of the newest campaign promises to surface this cycle: student loan forgiveness and reparations, and how you, the taxpayer, will be paying for both of them. So first up, student loan forgiveness. You have plenty of Democratic politicians that started salivating when they saw the droves of young people and students flocking to our favorite walking corpse, Bernie Sanders. They saw that there are tons of young, impressionable voters out there just waiting for someone to promise the right thing. Hence, student loan forgiveness. Let's start with the first major problem here. The primary reason that tuition rates have skyrocketed in the last couple of decades is because the government started to subsidize it with federal student loans and federal student aid. College administrators started licking their lips with anticipation and dollar signs in their eyes like a character in a Tom and Jerry cartoon. The government is leaving money on the table? There is money I can count on right there because, hell, it's just taxpayer money anyway. I know it's going to be there. So I'll raise tuition rates above that as well because the students are already registering. They can just make up the difference, and that's more money in my pocket. And with the focus on college degrees that has been pushed for about the same time frame, it's been working. Our society tells us that we have to have a college degree in order to be successful, to live comfortably, to get the things that we want. So things like trade schools or the military are often scoffed at, and they instead take on tens of thousands and sometimes over $100,000 in student debt per student. So in combining federal tuition subsidies with this cultural shift, we get our current situation, in which it's no longer enough to subsidize or give out aid or interest-free loans. Now we have to forgive those loans, forgive student debt. But guess who doesn't have a choice in the matter? All of us. You know, the folks that will actually be paying for it, the folks with jobs that are earning money that goes into the tax revenue, not the students themselves. So what you're telling me is that someone like me, that worked his way up in a career for over a decade that does not require a college degree, I'm going to have to pay for some kid that got $80,000 in debt because he or she went to a fine arts college to earn a degree in lesbian dance therapy and to find themselves? This isn't even getting into the idea that college is in no way the best, much less the only way, to have a successful career. But if you do have your heart set on a college education, you have a multitude of options with which to pay for it. Join the military for a few years. They offer $4,500 a year for tuition assistance, with many colleges holding classes on bases around the world. Then you have your GI Bill, which will cover 100% of tuition for at least 3 years. Or work at a college in a service or maintenance position. Many universities offer deeply discounted tuition rates for employees that are looking to get an education. Chick-fil-A even offers a tuition program for their employees, in which promising employees can secure a scholarship after working for the company for a given amount of time. So not only do they serve God's chicken, but they are using their own revenue as a private company to help others get a higher level of education. Which reminds me, do you have any idea how many scholarships there are out there? Literally hundreds of thousands. Private companies, charities, and foundations offer millions and millions of dollars a year to potential students to help pay for their schooling. You can get $2,000 from the Department of Transportation for making a 3-minute video talking about driver safety. Combine any of these options with low-cost schools like community colleges, and then transferring to a traditional four-year university, and bam, you have your degree. But no, you should be able to go to the school of your choice and get a degree in underwater basket weaving, and then cry about it when you can't get a job with your useless degree and demand that the government forgive the loan that you signed for as an adult. Oh, but it's predatory lending. I was young and stupid. Tough. That's life. Figure it out like an adult. Or, just demand that somebody else takes care of your unwise decisions. That works too. But reparations. Oh, reparations. The idea that we need to make financial offerings to those whose ancestors suffered under slavery almost 2 centuries ago. Because some of our ancestors almost 2 centuries ago did some really bad things. I understand the emotional argument here. I do. Nobody can make the case that slavery or the related brutalities that were conceived and acted upon during that time was in any way morally, or even from an economic standpoint, even practically acceptable. Nobody is saying that. But the idea that monetary tribute from one group to another will somehow right the wrongs of the past that happened generations beforehand is patently absurd on a number of levels. First, it completely throws out the idea of individual responsibility. The son shouldn't have to pay for the sins of the father. That was a key part of Locke's philosophy, that each individual is responsible for his or her actions and nobody else's. It's one of the centerpieces, the pillars of his ideas on property rights. But in addition to that, how is this monetary transaction supposed to make things right? Just with a snap of fingers, the history of slavery will be erased? It will be something that can be forgotten because money changed hands? Of course not. Will those receiving the money even be better off for it? And from a historical perspective, why would one ethnic group of Western society be the ones to pay for the sins of the past when the institution of slavery still exists in many parts of the Middle East and North Africa today? The truth is, history shows us that the West did not start slavery, but it did end it. Not only in the West itself, but throughout much of the rest of the world. Blood and treasure was spent by the great Western empires to end the horrors of slavery around the world, but we should be the ones paying for it. This, of course, is all without considering the logistical nightmares that such a policy would create. Who exactly is paying for it? Those whose ancestors owned slaves? In America, that won't be very many people. Even with families like mine that can be traced back to the founding of some of the first southern states, where is the line drawn in relation? Does it have to be a direct relation? What about my third cousin from 200 years ago? Even at the time of the American Civil War, less than 5% of the Southern population owned slaves. So that won't be a whole lot of money going into the reparations pot. And how much is owed anyway? How much money wipes the slate clean? Will the money only be coming from white folks? What about African Americans that were slave owners themselves? You see how messy this gets, and very quickly. But the truth of the matter is this. If such a policy was implemented, there would be no sorting or standards set. There would be a blank check to be filled in by some government bureaucrat and sent out to those that they deem deserving of it. Period. Everyone will be paying for it because where the hell do you think taxes come from? At the end of the day, this is another lazy way to get voting blocks in the Democrats' corner. Which brings me to my closing points here. The two subjects I picked, student loan forgiveness and reparations, seem to be pretty random, but the two are far more related than you might think. Not only are these two proposals being used by Democratic candidates, but they come from the same basic principle of outright buying votes, and they aren't even trying to hide it at this point. And they're doing it with other people's money, no less. What easier way is there to ensure that huge voting blocks pull the lever for you than telling them that they deserve this money, that they are standing up for them? Machiavelli would be proud. But here's the other thing, though. How much pride in ourselves have we lost that major political candidates believe that they can buy our votes with this kind of weak rhetoric? How are these offerings not insulting to those that support them? The idea that they not only need, but have a right to demand the help of others. In the case of student loan forgiveness, because of a situation that they got themselves into, signing a legally binding document as an adult, making an adult decision. In the case of reparations, that they are deserving of monetary compensation because of something that happened hundreds of years ago, separated by generations. Unfortunately, it's a sign of the times, an indication of how willing we are to hand our wants and our dignity along with it over to the government. Thanks for listening, and I hope you'll join me next week to become more liberty-centered with us. I'm William Gadsden with Think Liberty.